My name is Guy Blaskey. I'm here from Pooch and Mutt to talk about condition-appropriate nutrient feeding, which is a new concept in the dog food world. A little bit about me, a little bit about the company. As I said, I'm from Pooch and Mutt. I also do marketing consultancy, run a marketing consultancy called XOXX. I'm a regular contributor to PBW News. I'm on the board of the Dog Rescue Federation, again to help with their marketing. The aim of the Dog Rescue Federation is to help independent dog rescues all join together and have a singular voice. I do regular talks at PATS, both here and in Sandown, and I have done so since it first started. And AMTRA, the Animal Medicines Training and Regulatory Authority, is someone we just started working with, and we have a CPD accreditation for the concept of condition-appropriate nutrient feeding, and I will tell you more about that later and how you can go through and get CPD points for learning about it. Now, before I get started, this is a picture of Socrates. I don't think many other people have started with pictures of Greek philosophers, but just to give you an idea, he lived around 470 to 399 BC, and amongst other things, he said, "He is wisest who knows that he does not know." The reason that I'm bringing this up at this point and mentioning it in a pet nutrition talk is because, quite frankly, there's been a lot of rubbish spoken about pet nutrition recently, both on TV, in print, and elsewhere. A few examples have come up quite recently by people who are quite possibly in this hall today, but I think just last week I read in an article on the Telegraph's website that dogs will die if they don't eat meat, which is rubbish. It's blatant rubbish. Dogs don't need meat. Dogs don't even need protein. Dogs need the amino acids within protein to survive. Yes, meat is an extremely good source to get them from, but it doesn't mean they'll die if they don't have meat. Similarly, there's another company here that's a fast-growing food company who say that dogs can't digest carbohydrates because they don't have amylase, which is responsible for the digestion of carbohydrates. They don't have amylase in their saliva like humans do. And again, this is rubbish because they have plenty of amylase and they have it in their stomach where digestion takes place. So it's one of these arguments that makes no sense, but people keep repeating and kind of do the whole thing that if you repeat it often enough, people will believe you. Unfortunately, it's not true. And there's quite a lot of that out there. The reason, in my opinion, that a lot of this happens is because there is no right in nutrition. There is quite a lot of wrong. There's quite a lot of bad nutrition out there, but there is no 100% right. One of the key reasons for that is that as you look at different processes in the body, the more you look at them individually, and the more you go down into a micro detail about nutrition, the more you miss the rest of what's going on. So you can look at very simple, quite complicated, but on a simple basis, you can look at chemical interactions, but the body works as a whole. It's like trying to understand a car by looking at the mechanics of a brake. It doesn't make sense. You need to understand the whole of it, the whole workings of it. So when people talk in kind of micro detail, they quite often are talking rubbish, quite frankly. So I'm putting myself up here again to talk about nutrition when I just said everyone talks rubbish about nutrition. And I just want to get across the point that what I'm saying is, to the best of our knowledge at this stage and in general concepts, and may or may not be right, should be right, makes a lot of sense. But there are differing views on everything. I've just formulated a range of 4 or 5 different condition-appropriate foods that I'll come on to. I've worked with 5 nutritionists in the process of doing it, and they didn't agree on different things, and they're all extremely well qualified. So what I'm trying to humbly say is that this is the best of our knowledge, and it could be proven wrong, but it's good insight and it's very useful. From Socrates onto another Greek. And this isn't a Greek philosophy lecture or a Greek history lesson. But this is Hippocrates, who lived around the same time. Hippocrates is essentially known as the father of modern medicine, to the point where if you qualify to be a physician nowadays, you still have to take the Hippocratic Oath, which is in his name. Hippocrates, over 2,000 years ago, said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." And this is a concept which is the basis of the condition-appropriate feeding that I'm going to talk about today. And key to it is that increasingly, and this is coming out in human nutrition a lot, but increasingly, we know that medication is great for short-term problems. If you've got a headache, a painkiller is brilliant. If you're in a car crash, get yourself to a hospital. They will look after you. But for long-term conditions, modern medicine is not brilliant. The fact that they are long-term conditions kind of proves that in itself. Medication can help deal with the symptoms of long-term conditions, but tend not to be the best cure for long-term conditions. And this is where nutrition comes in. And increasingly it's been proven, and if you read books like the China study, which goes into this in quite a lot of detail, and there's documentaries like Food Matters that go into this, you will see that there are two sides to the argument. One is that bad nutrition causes disease. And that's pretty obvious when you look at obesity rates and diabetes rates, etc., etc. The flip side of that is that good nutrition can cure diseases. And good nutrition is one of the key starting points for long-term problems. And that's something that we're getting onto. It's one of the foundations of the C.A.N.F concept. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Before we do that, I'm going to go on to what makes food healthy. We all talk about healthy food. Not necessarily everybody knows what makes their food healthy or not healthy. The basic concept that I've got on screen here is something called the nutrient density of calories. Now, on screen there is a pint of Foster's, a McDonald's cheeseburger, and a Wok-Sid chicken and veg salad. I'm pretty sure if I asked you all to put them in order of which was the healthiest, you'd probably go left to right. On a simple basis, if you lived on just Foster's, you wouldn't live very long. If you lived on just McDonald's cheeseburgers, you'd probably live longer than on just Foster's, but not that long. If you lived on the Wok-Sid chicken and veg, you'd live considerably longer. The reason that they are in that order, and the reason that one is healthier than the other, is down to a concept called the nutrient density of calories. As you can see on screen, I've put the nutritional breakdowns of each of them. They both have around 250 to 280 calories. The pint of beer has not a lot in it other than a bit of carbohydrate. There's no nutrition in there. The McDonald's cheeseburger versus the Wok-Sid chicken have roughly the same calories, but as you'll see, you get a lot more protein in the chicken. You get a lot more fiber, which helps your digestion in there. If you look at the vitamin C rates, I think it's 2% versus 70% of your recommended daily amount. If you look at the vitamin A, it's 6% versus 140%. You're getting a lot more of what you need in there. And the way that this works is that if you imagine in humans, we have a finite amount of calories that we should eat on a daily basis. It depends on exercise, metabolic rate, and lots of other factors, but essentially it's about 2,000 calories for a woman and 2,500 calories for a man, mainly because men are bigger. Our goal to eat healthily is to get as many nutrients as we can within those calories. And there are arguments that they're kind of unproven arguments, but pretty good arguments that say your body will keep eating until it has the nutrients that it needs to survive. Now, if you eat lots of non-nutrient dense foods, you're just going to get really fat and not have the nutrients, which leads us to the situation that we're in at the moment, where you get people who are massively obese, yet are clinically malnourished, because they don't have the nutrients they need to survive, because they're essentially eating junk. Whereas on the flip side, you can eat a lot less food if it's nutrient dense, and you get all your nutrients, and you survive, and you become incredibly healthy. So that is what makes food healthy in general. But there's lots of different types of food. And what I put up here is more than anything else is the condition that we live in that determines our nutrient requirements. This is the key behind the C.A.N.F concept, is that it's about the conditions we live in that determine our nutrient requirements. There's arguments that you'll hear around the show today that dogs should eat the same as wolves because that's what they eat in the wild. And that's a really solid argument. It makes a lot of sense when you hear it, that that's what dogs eat, so that's what they should eat, you know. But it's not necessarily true. It's healthier than a lot of crap that they've been eating, but it's not necessarily true for a few reasons. One, it doesn't take into account, or a lot of the foods don't take into account the actual nutritional breakdown of what a dog eats when it kills its prey. Because the first thing a dog would normally eat, or a wolf would normally eat when it kills its prey, is the contents of its prey's stomach. So unless you consider that into the nutritional breakdown, you're not actually getting a correct match. More importantly than that, wolves tend to die at about 7 in the wild, whereas dogs tend to live into their teens. And with living longer comes a lot of different conditions. So for example, if a wolf got arthritis, because it was living for longer in the wild, it would effectively not be able to hunt, it would not be able to feed, so it would die. Whereas we don't want our dogs to die, we want to look after them. So we feed them the nutrients that they need to survive. So with the right nutrition, arthritis doesn't become a life-threatening disease, it just becomes some mild discomfort that can be treated. So that's a key thing. And I'm sure at this stage, you're probably asking me why I've got a picture of Mo Farah and some old bodybuilders on stage. And the reason is to kind of explain this difference. Mo Farah, double Olympic champion, has exactly the same digestive system as the overage bodybuilders, but they live in different conditions. Their digestive systems are as similar as a wolf and a dog's digestive system. In fact, they are far more similar, but they need different nutrients because of the conditions that they live in. Mo Farah, for example, is running over 100 miles every week. So he needs a lot of carbohydrate to fuel those runs. He needs the micronutrients that help break down that carbohydrate and turn it into energy so that he can perform at his best. The bodybuilders, and especially elderly bodybuilders, which these are, which is an interesting picture to find on the internet, need protein. They need protein to build and maintain their muscle and to do what they do. And they need the micronutrients to help them break down that protein and turn it into muscle. So this is different sets of humans living in different conditions that need different nutrients. It's all healthy nutrition, but they need different things. And this is how this applies to dogs. So looking at this screen, a lot of traditional feeding concepts would say that these 3 dogs on the left are all Labradors, so they all need the same food, either just because they're dogs and all dogs need the same food, or because they're Labradors and they should be fed a Labrador diet. But if you look at that through what we call a condition-appropriate lens or a CANF lens, you don't know that one of those Labradors could be arthritic, one could be overweight, one could have hypertension problems, one could have anxiety problems. Whatever those problems are, that's the condition that they live in, and that's how they should be fed with the right nutrients for their condition. And the flip side of that is if you look at the dogs on the right, traditionally thinking, people would go, well, they're different breeds, so they need different nutrition. But they live in the same conditions as each other. They live in the same environment, they're doing the same activity, they essentially have the same lifestyle in the same way as the 3 bodybuilders on the side before have the same lifestyle. So they should have the same nutrition, the same nutrient breakdown. Obviously they're different sizes and the bigger ones will need a bit more than the smaller ones, but in terms of what they need to fuel their activity, it should be relatively similar. So how does this look and what is condition-appropriate food? This is some salmon and some chicken, for those that can't tell. They're both pretty healthy options when it comes to food, but they're different for different reasons. So salmon, for example, is full of omega-3. Omega-3 has been shown to be really good for joints. So if you've got a dog or a human with joint problems, salmon's a really great choice for them. Chicken, on the other hand, is low fat. It contains an ingredient which is called L-carnitine, which helps lean muscle development. So if somebody's overweight, that's a much better choice of a protein than salmon, because it's going to help them lose weight and it's going to help them develop lean muscle. Now, in humans, you can take this a little bit further. So, for example, there have been studies that show that turmeric is really good for joints. Similarly, studies that show chili is really good for metabolism, so therefore helps weight loss. So arguably, an arthritic person should have the salmon with turmeric, which would help their joints, whereas an overweight person should have the chicken with chili, which would help them lose weight. With dogs, you can take that a whole step further, because we create their whole diets for them. We create a full diet, and we can add the full range of nutraceuticals, which is my background and Pooch and Mutt's background. You can add that into the food. This leads us on to some of our range of foods to explain this concept. Move Easy, for example, we start with salmon. That helps dogs move easy. It's the best protein source that would help them move easy. Then we can add to it a full range of nutraceuticals such as glucosamine, chondroitin, rosehip, greenlet mussel, all of which individually help joint movement. Similarly, with our weight loss product, Slim and Slender, we can do exactly the same. We start with chicken, as I've already shown, because chicken is a low-fat protein source, and we can add in things like supplemental L-carnitine, supplemental CLA, psyllium that helps dogs feel fuller, and that gives you a complete food that will help dogs to lose weight. We've developed a full range around this for different problems, for the 5 most common problems, and we have another 3 in development, all designed to help dogs, and I'll put our stand number up at the end so you can see and you can go through it. But that's what we think is the best way to feed a dog. The best way, you can't split dogs up by breed. It's not a brilliant way to split up what they should eat. You can't really split dogs up into which ones like chicken, which ones like duck, and which ones like fish, because it doesn't really matter for their health in the same way that it doesn't matter for us. I really like chocolate, but if I were fed on a diet of chocolate, I'm not going to be that healthy. So we think the conditions that they live in is the best way. It's the most logical and the best way to split up what your dog should eat. As most of you are retailers, I've put this into a pretty simple diagram to explain kind of where it fits in the world, in the market of dog food. So in the bottom corner, this is split on axes of function and ingredients. We've had standard mass market pet foods with the brands of which I won't name, but we've had them around for years. You guys all know them. There are 2, or before this concept, there were 2 types of more expensive pet food or better quality pet food. One is the prescription foods, the likes of which I'm sure you all know. I don't know why the N is on a separate line, it shouldn't be, but I'm sure you all know those. And increasingly is the grain-free foods that have been coming in and is the biggest growth area in recent years in dog food. What we have tried to do with the CANF concept is not to reinvent the wheel totally, but just do something that fits both. Increasingly, you've got a lot of your customers moving on to the grain-free, more healthy dog foods. At some point, those dogs are going to develop certain conditions, and a lot of vets in particular may tend to put those dogs back onto so-called prescription foods, but your customers already have bought into the argument that they should be feeding their dogs grain-free, and quite frankly, there's no option out there that fits that at the moment. So that's what we've looked to do. There's a very quick run-through. These are our stockist inquiry details if you want to stock. We're obviously here on stand B27. And the whole concept of condition-appropriate nutrient feeding, or CANF as we're calling it, is available as an AMTRA module that you can get 2 CPD points for. If you go to poochandmutt.com and in the news section, you can see more details on that.